The unintended bond. Dr. Leona Harper adjusted the calibration on her spectral analyzer, the alien suns of Noctera casting a purple-blue glow across her face. After 3 years aboard the research vessel Pathfinder, she'd finally set foot on the surface of the elusive planet that had captivated Earth's astronomers for decades. Its peculiar binary star system created celestial phenomena unlike anything in recorded history. Dr. Harper, the Vesserai delegation approaches, called Thomas, her research assistant. Remember the briefing: minimal interaction, observation only. Leona nodded, though her attention remained fixed on the peculiar crystalline formations that seemed to respond to the fluctuating light patterns. The indigenous Vesserai had allowed their expedition limited access to study what they called the whispering crystals, but with strict protocols. Earth's diplomatic corps had worked for years to establish this tentative scientific exchange. "They're earlier than expected," she murmured, hastily storing her readings. The Vesserai were notoriously precise about timing. Any deviation likely meant something significant. The delegation appeared from behind an outcropping of iridescent stones, their tall, slender forms moving with fluid grace. Unlike previous encounters, these Vesserai wore elaborate ceremonial attire, flowing garments woven with what appeared to be living light, shifting patterns that mirrored the pulsing crystal surrounding them. At their center walked a figure whose presence commanded attention, taller than the others, with skin that shimmered like obsidian under starlight. His eyes, vertically slitted and an impossible shade of amber, surveyed the humans with measured interest. "Prince Darovan," Thomas whispered in recognition. "The heir to the sovereign circle. This wasn't scheduled." Leona straightened, remembering protocol. The Vesserai valued respectful distance and minimal eye contact during first meetings, but before she could position herself appropriately, the crystals around them pulsed with sudden intensity, bathing the clearing in brilliant light. The Vesserai escorts dropped to one knee in perfect unison, leaving only the prince standing. He tilted his head, studying Leona with unexpected intensity. "The resonance responds to you, Skywatcher," Prince Darovan said, his voice carrying the melodic quality all Vesserai possessed. An unexpected harmony. Before Leona could formulate a diplomatically appropriate response, the ground beneath them trembled. The crystal's light coalesced into spiraling patterns that encircled both her and the prince. "What's happening?" she asked, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding caution. An elderly Vesserai stepped forward, elaborate markings across her face identifying her as Eladri, the royal astronomer they'd met during preliminary exchanges. "The celestial convergence has chosen," Eladri announced, her tone suggesting both awe and concern. "After 16 cycles of waiting, the prince's resonant bond manifests. With you, human scholar." Prince Darovan appeared as startled as Leona felt. "This cannot be. The bond only forms between those whose life patterns are aligned through generations of preparation." "Yet the crystals speak clearly," Eladri insisted. "The human astronomer's pattern resonates with yours, my prince. The covenant is binding." Thomas stepped closer to Leona, whispering urgently. "Dr. Harper, I think you've just been chosen for something significant." The diplomatic brief mentioned a selection ritual, but indicated it was impossible for off-worlders to participate. The light patterns intensified, forming intricate symbols that hovered between Leona and Darovan. The prince's expression shifted from shock to something resembling resigned curiosity. "What exactly does this resonant bond entail?" Leona asked, her scientific mind already analyzing possibilities while her diplomatic training screamed caution. "By our most ancient laws," Darovan replied, his amber eyes now fixed on hers, "you have become my future consort and co-sovereign of the Vesserai Collective. The crystals have bound our destinies." Leona blinked, the implications slowly crystallizing. "You mean I've accidentally married you?" "The binding is more profound than your Earth concept of marriage," Eladri explained. "Your essence and the prince's now share a connection that transcends physical proximity. In time, you will develop awareness of each other's thoughts and sensations." As if to confirm this extraordinary claim, Leona suddenly felt an alien presence. At the edges of her consciousness, curious, confused, but undeniably present. The resonance has not chosen a non-Veserai in 7,000 years, Darovan said quietly. The sovereign circle will not accept this easily, nor will many of our people. Neither will Earth's diplomatic corps, Leona replied, her mind racing through the potential interplanetary incidents this could trigger. I came to study your stars, not rule your civilization. Yet even as she spoke, the crystalline light pulsed, in rhythm with her heartbeat, a visible manifestation of a connection she could already feel growing stronger by the moment. Whispers of rebellion, the grand atrium of the sovereign citadel stretched overhead in a breathtaking display of crystalline architecture, each facet capturing and refracting the light of Noctera's twin suns. Leona stood at the massive observation window, watching the ritual procession in the courtyard below. 3 weeks had passed since the resonant bond had irrevocably altered her life's trajectory. The homage of houses begins, said Javier, the stern-faced protocol advisor assigned to transform her from Earth scientist to Veserai royalty. Each noble lineage will present their offerings to acknowledge your position. Leona nodded, though her attention was divided between the ceremony and the data tablet she'd been studying. And how many still refuse to participate? Javier's expression tightened. 7 minor houses abstain, 3 major ones. Less opposition than anticipated. That's not particularly reassuring, Leona murmured. She'd quickly learned that Veserai politics operated on currents of ancient alliances and subtle symbolism. Absences spoke as loudly as attendance. A gentle pressure touched her consciousness. Darovan, reaching through their developing bond. Over the past weeks, their mental connection had strengthened, allowing impressions and emotions to flow between them. Now she sensed his cautious optimism tinged with concern. The ceremony proceeds well. His thoughts brushed against hers. House Valkyri's unexpected appearance signals a shift in our favor. The door slid open, admitting Eledri, the elderly astronomer who had become Leona's most reliable ally. Unlike most Veserai, Eledri viewed the unexpected bond as an opportunity rather than an aberration. You should be below with the prince, Eledri noted, her multifaceted eyes taking in Leona's Earth-styled clothing rather than the traditional Veserai garments prepared for her. I needed space to think, Leona replied, and to analyze these stellar readings. The anomalies in your outer system are increasing. Eledri moved closer, lowering her voice. Your dedication to our astronomical concerns is noted, but there are more immediate matters. Whispers reach me from the temple districts. Catherine, the High Seer, speaks against your bond in sacred circles. Leona frowned. The High Seer had been conspicuously absent from all formal functions since her arrival. Religious opposition? More complex, Eledri replied. Catherine was to bond his daughter, Sorene, to Darovan. Arrangements decades in making, now dissolved by the resonance's choice. Political alliances disguised as religious concerns, Leona concluded. Classic. Indeed, but Catherine's influence runs deep, particularly among the traditional sects who see your human presence as contamination of royal lineage. A slight vibration ran through the floor, causing the crystals overhead to chime softly. Eledri tensed. That's the 4th tremor today, Leona observed. Your geological reports showed no fault lines in this region. Our world grows restless as the celestial convergence approaches. Eledri replied cryptically. Many see it as an omen regarding your presence. Below, the ceremonial procession continued, each noble house presenting symbolic gifts before Prince Darovan. His tall, imposing figure remained perfectly composed, though Leona could sense his growing fatigue through their bond. Javier's communication device chimed. After consulting it, his expression darkened. Intelligence from the border provinces. House Maver mobilizes their private security forces officially for training exercises. House Maver, Leona repeated. They control the eastern crystal mines, correct? Darovan mentioned their ambiguous loyalties. Their matriarch, Celevra, was Prince Darovan's guardian after his parents' disappearance, Eledri explained. Her ambitions for influence are well known. Leona felt a chill that had nothing to do with the citadel's temperature. You mean she was positioned to be regent if anything happened to Darovan? Until I appeared. Javier and Aledri exchanged glances that confirmed her suspicion. I've become an obstacle to multiple power plays, Leona realized aloud. No wonder my morning tea was analyzed for toxins. A deeper tremor shook the building, this one strong enough to disrupt the ceremony below. Through the window, Leona watched. As the assembled nobles looked skyward with expressions of concern. Something's wrong, she said, her scientific instincts flaring. These aren't normal seismic events. Before either Veserai could respond, the massive doors swung open. Darovan entered, his ceremonial attire shimmering with embedded crystals that pulsed in rhythm with those adorning the chamber. The homage concludes early, he announced, his eyes finding Leona immediately. House Mavir's representative delivered not just their traditional offering, but a warning. Celebra claims to have had a vision. The human bond will trigger the great unmaking during the convergence. Convenient prophecy, Leona remarked dryly. It resonates with the traditionalists, Darovan replied, moving to stand beside her at the window. Already gatherings form in the lower districts. They demand you undergo the trial of elements to prove worthy of the bond. Leona felt his concern flowing through their connection. And if I refuse? The law would require your return to Earth, severing our bond. His mental presence against hers darkened with something she hadn't felt from him before: fear. Such a severing has never been survived by either party. Another tremor shook the citadel, stronger than before. Outside, a strange aurora began to form in the daytime sky, ribbons of energy coiling above the crystal spires of the city. These phenomena aren't natural, Leona said, her attention returning to her data tablet. The readings show energy patterns, similar to your resonance crystals but exponentially more powerful. Something in your planet's core is responding to external stimuli. Eledri moved swiftly to examine her findings. These patterns, they haven't been seen since the last convergence, 5 centuries ago. We face challenges on multiple fronts, Darovan said quietly. Political opposition grows as our world itself appears to resist our bond. Leona straightened, making a decision. Then I'll face the trial of elements. Not because of Celevra's manipulations or Kethrin's disapproval, but because proving my worth might buy us time to understand what's truly happening to Noctera. Through their bond, she felt Darovan's admiration, but also his deeper worry. The trial has not been administered in generations, he cautioned. None know what challenges it might present to a human physiology. I didn't come across the stars to be intimidated by your planet's geological tantrums or political schemes, Leona replied, projecting a confidence she didn't entirely feel. Besides, I suspect the timing of these events isn't coincidental. The convergence, the tremors, the opposition, they're connected. As if in answer, the largest tremor yet shook the citadel, and through the window they watched as one of the ancient crystal monuments in the central plaza split down the middle, its fragments scattering across the ceremonial grounds like an omen. The sacred caverns beneath the sovereign citadel hummed with an ancient power that made the hair on Leona's arm stand on end. Luminescent crystals lined the walls of the massive chamber, pulsing in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, as if the very stones were watching her. The trial of elements has not been witnessed by outsiders in 7 generations, intoned Vexari, the eldest member of the sovereign circle. His wizened face bore the elaborate crystalline implants that marked those who had served the royal lineage for over a century. Yet circumstances demand exception. Around the circular chamber stood representatives from each major house, their expressions ranging from open hostility to guarded curiosity. Celevra of House Mavir watched with calculated intensity, her silver eyes never leaving Leona. Beside her stood her son, Jarvek, whose resemblance to Darovan hinted at their distant familial connection. The human accepts the ancient challenge, Celevra announced, her melodic voice carrying an undercurrent of satisfaction. May the elements judge what the resonance has so unexpectedly chosen. Darovan stood apart, As tradition dictated, the bonded could not interfere. Through their mental connection, Leona felt his tightly controlled anxiety. "Be cautious," his thoughts whispered. "The trial adapts to the deepest fears of the challenged." Eledri approached, carrying a crystalline circlet. "This will amplify the bond during your trial," she explained, placing it gently on Leona's head. "Should your life force falter, Darovan may intervene, though such intervention would invalidate the trial." "No pressure," Leona muttered, earning a puzzled look from the elderly astronomer. High Seer Kethrin stepped forward, his elaborate headdress casting fractured light across the chamber. "The elements await: earth, air, water, fire, and void. Each will test not just your physical form, but your spirit's resonance with our world." At his gesture, the floor beneath Leona began to transform, crystal structures rising to create a pathway leading deeper into the cavern. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, feeling the eyes of the entire Vesserai nobility upon her. The first chamber was surprisingly small, its walls embedded with soil and strange bioluminescent plants. As the entrance sealed behind her, the chamber darkened except for the pulsing flora. "Earth challenges your foundation," came Kethrin's voice from hidden speakers. "What roots you? What nourishes your being?" The soil began to shift, forming into a humanoid figure that bore an unsettling resemblance to her father. "You abandoned your world," it spoke in his voice. "Abandoned your heritage, your responsibility to Earth." Leona froze, memories washing over her. Her father's disappointment when she'd accepted the Pathfinder mission, his final words, "There's nothing for you among the stars that's worth what you're leaving behind." "I didn't abandon Earth," she replied, finding her voice. "I expanded humanity's understanding of the universe. My work, your work," the figure interrupted, "or your escape. Always running from connection, from belonging. Now accidentally bound to an alien prince. Will you run from this too when it becomes difficult?" The accusation struck uncomfortably close to home. Through the bond, she felt Darovan's presence intensify, lending her strength. "I've never run from difficulty," Leona stated firmly. "I've sought knowledge even when the path was uncertain. My foundation isn't a place, it's purpose, understanding, discovery." As she spoke, the soil figure began to crumble, but its disintegration revealed something unexpected, a small crystalline seed that glowed with inner light. Instinctively, she knelt and took it. The moment her fingers touched the crystal, the chamber walls retracted, revealing a passageway forward. The second chamber swirled with mist and wind that nearly knocked her off her feet. "Air tests your adaptability," Kethrin's voice announced. "What transforms you? What ideals guide your changes?" The mists coalesced into swirling vortices, each containing images from her past: her graduation, joining the space program, first contact with the Vesserai delegation, the moment of bonding with Darovan. But interspersed were moments she didn't recognize, possible futures, showing her both enthroned beside Darovan and also alone, returning to a changed Earth where decades had passed. "Choose," whispered the wind. "One path must be abandoned." Leona studied the swirling possibilities, her scientific mind analyzing what she was being shown. "This is a false dichotomy," she finally said. "Adaptation isn't about choosing one fixed path. It's about navigating change while maintaining core principles." She held up the crystal seed from the first chamber. "I carry what matters with me: knowledge, connection, discovery. The specific form my life takes is less important than the values that shape my choices." The wind howled in response, but the crystal seed glowed brighter, somehow anchoring her against the gale. Gradually, the vortices dissipated, leaving a single path forward. The third chamber was filled with water so clear it was nearly invisible until she stepped into it, finding herself suddenly submerged to her waist. "Water reflects your truths," came Kethrin's voice, distorted through the liquid. "What lies beneath your surface? What currents move you unseen?" The water began to rise rapidly. Within moments, it reached her shoulders, forcing her to swim. Below, She could see her reflection on the chamber floor, but it wasn't her face looking back. Instead, she saw herself as a Vesserai, with their characteristic features. "Is this what you desire?" the water seemed to ask. "To abandon your humanity? To become something else entirely for the sake of belonging?" The water continued rising, now forcing her to tread to keep her head above the surface. The crystal seed in her hand pulsed, sending ripples through the chamber. "I don't need to become Vesserai to build a bridge between our worlds," she called out. "The strength of our connection lies in our differences, not in erasing them." As the words left her mouth, she realized their truth on a deeper level. Through the bond, she felt Derovan's response, a wave of profound agreement and something more complex: admiration. The water began to recede, but as it lowered, a new challenge emerged. The fourth chamber glowed with intense heat, its floor covered in flowing magma patterns. "Fire tests your passion," Catherine intoned. "What ignites your spirit? What would you sacrifice for what you desire?" Here, the challenge took its most direct form. In the center of the chamber, a pedestal rose, bearing a crystal identical to the seed she carried, but larger, fully formed. Between her and the pedestal, however, the floor had opened to reveal actual molten stone from deep within Noctera. "Cross," came the simple command. "Claim what you seek." The heat was overwhelming, making it difficult to even approach the edge of the safe platform. Through their bond, she felt Derovan's alarm. This challenge was far more physically dangerous than the others. Leona studied the chamber, her scientific mind racing. The crystal seed in her hand pulsed in rhythm with the larger crystal across the gap. On impulse, she knelt and held the seed toward the larger crystal. "Some barriers aren't meant to be crossed physically," she said. "Some connections transcend physical space, just like the bond between Derovan and myself." The seed crystal in her hand flared brilliantly, shooting a beam of light toward its larger counterpart. Where the light touched the magma, it cooled instantly, creating a narrow bridge of solid stone. Without hesitation, Leona crossed, retrieving the larger crystal. The moment she touched it, the chamber walls receded, revealing the final challenge. The void chamber was utterly dark and silent, a perfect absence of stimulation. Even the light from her crystals seemed swallowed by the oppressive nothing. "Void reveals your essence," Catherine's voice echoed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "When all external forces are removed, what remains at your core?" In the darkness, Leona felt her bond with Derovan suddenly vanish. The absence was jarring, like losing a sense she hadn't realized had become so integral. Panic threatened to overwhelm. Was this separation permanent? Had she failed? The crystals in her hands grew dim, offering no guidance. Then, in the perfect darkness, she realized the truth of this final test. It wasn't about what remained when everything was stripped away. It was about what she would choose to create in that emptiness. Closing her eyes, Leona focused not on the absence of the bond, but on what it had taught her about connection, about bridging differences, about finding harmony in diversity. What remains is possibility, she spoke into the void. The potential to build something new, to connect worlds, ideas, people, not by force or accident, but by choice. As the words left her lips, the crystals in her hands flared to life, illuminating the chamber. At its center stood a door, the exit from the trials. But what truly caught her attention was the wall behind it, covered in ancient carvings depicting humans and Vesserai together, beneath twin stars. "This isn't the first time our peoples have connected," she whispered in realization. The door swung open, revealing the main chamber where the Vesserai nobility waited. As Leona stepped through, holding the crystals before her, a stunned silence fell across the assembly. "The human has completed the trial of elements," Vexari announced, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. All 5 challenges answered with wisdom rather than force. Celevra's face had gone rigid with barely contained fury. Beside her, Jarvek wore an expression of calculated reassessment. Catherine simply looked troubled, as if the outcome had revealed something he hadn't anticipated. Derovan moved forward, the bond between them surging back to full strength. Through it, Leona sensed his pride, relief, and lingering concern. "The trial confirms what the resonance declared," he stated formally. "Leona Harper of Earth stands, worthy as future consort to the Sovereign Circle." But as the assembled nobles reluctantly acknowledged the verdict, another tremor, stronger than any before, shook the sacred cavern. Crystals cracked along the walls, and in the distance alarm signals began to sound. "Something still destabilizes the planet core," Eledri said urgently. "The trial's completion should have brought harmony." "Unless," Leona replied, studying the ancient carvings more closely. "The trial was never the real issue. I think it's time we discussed what really happened during the last celestial convergence, and why someone doesn't want this bond to succeed." Fortress of Silence. The living quarters assigned to Dominic and Nylari aboard the Thandorian diplomatic vessel Celestial Harmony were a study in careful compromise. The spacious chamber featured distinct zones, one calibrated to Earth atmospheric conditions, the other to Thandorian preferences, with a shared central area where both could exist comfortably. Like the marriage itself, the space was an engineered solution to an impossible problem. 3 weeks had passed since the Krell attack on their wedding day. The joint fleet had repelled the invaders, but the close call had underscored the fragility of their situation. Now, in the aftermath, a different kind of tension filled their shared home. Dominic sat at his workstation reviewing security protocols while Nylari meditated in her quadrant, her forearms held in precise positions that maintained energy flow according to Thandorian practice. They had fallen into a pattern of polite coexistence, exchanging necessary information, coordinating schedules, but little else. The Krell utilized a new shielding frequency, Dominic noted, breaking the silence. "Our standard weapons were less effective." Nylari's compound eyes shifted toward him. "Yes. Our scientists are analyzing the data. I've requested priority access to their findings." "Thank you." Silence descended again, heavy and awkward. Later that evening, as they prepared for their separate rest cycles, Dominic noticed Nylari studying a hologram of Earth landscapes. Her delicate fingers traced the outline of mountains and oceans with what seemed like curiosity. "That's the Pacific Northwest," he said, "where I grew up." She didn't startle, though he knew she hadn't heard him approach. "The topography is chaotic compared to Thandorian landscapes, yet beautiful in its asymmetry. I could show you someday," he offered, "when duty permits." She considered this. "That would be educational." The ship's alarm interrupted their moment. Not the urgent battle alert they'd heard before, but a priority communication signal. Both their interfaces activated simultaneously. "Ambassador Harlow, Princess Nylari," came General Weston's voice. "We've intercepted Krell communications indicating a planned attack on the Thandorian colony at Vega Prime. Their intention appears to be testing the resolve of our alliance." Nylari's posture shifted instantly to military readiness. "How soon?" 48 hours. We're mobilizing a joint response fleet." Dominic and Nylari exchanged glances. This was the first true test of their union's purpose. "We should coordinate personally," Dominic said. "The response must show absolute unity." Nylari nodded. "Agreed. I will contact my mother's war council." For the first time, they moved in perfect synchronization, both reaching for their formal attire. As Dominic struggled with the unfamiliar clasps of his Thandorian-influenced uniform, he felt cool fingers assisting him. "These are designed to represent strength through vulnerability," Nylari explained, adjusting the ceremonial armor plates. "The points where they connect symbolize that what appears weakest can become strongest when properly supported." Her face was inches from his, close enough that he could see the individual facets of her compound eyes, thousands of tiny reflections of himself looking back. "Thank you," he said softly. "We represent more than ourselves now," she replied, her melodic voice unusually gentle. "Our peoples must see us move as one." In the command center, they presented a united front as they helped coordinate the defense strategy. Dominic noticed how Nylari's tactical brilliance complemented his diplomatic approach. When she suggested a bold flanking maneuver, he advocated for it with the human admirals who might have otherwise dismissed an alien strategy. Hours later, exhausted but satisfied with the preparation, they returned to their quarters. The silence between them had transformed, no longer a wall but a shared moment of understanding. "You surprised me today," Nylari admitted as they stood in the neutral zone between their separate sleeping areas. "How so?" "You defended my tactical assessment without hesitation. Many humans would have sided with their own kind." Dominic smiled. "Slightly. I'm not married to my own kind, I'm married to you." Something flickered across her alien features, an expression he couldn't yet read. "Rest well, Ambassador Harlow," she said, turning toward her chamber. "Dominic," he corrected gently. "If we're to convince others this is real, perhaps we should start with names." She paused, then nodded. "Dominic," she repeated, the name musical in her Thandorian intonation. "And you may call me Nylari." It wasn't love, not even close. But as Dominic prepared for sleep, he realized something had shifted between them. The fortress of silence had developed its first small window. "Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses." The celestial convergence. The ancient vessel lay half-buried in crystalline formations, its sleek design unlike any spacecraft Leona had ever seen. Around it, the crystal forest hummed with increasing energy as Noctera's twin moons began their rare alignment overhead. "We have less than an hour before full convergence," Durovan said, scanning the perimeter for Celevra's forces. They had barely escaped the city, commandeering a hover transport with Eledri's help. "This is it," Leona confirmed, comparing the coordinates to those displayed in the archived suit. The Kronos Initiative's legacy. As they approached, the vessel's entrance panel illuminated, responding to their presence. Inside, a single chamber housed a complex array of crystalline technology, part Vesserai, part unmistakably human in design. A resonance amplifier, Durovan realized, examining the apparatus, built to harmonize with the planet's core during convergence. Leona studied the control interface, recognizing mathematical principles despite the alien configuration. "It requires dual activation, a synchronized connection between human and Vesserai consciousness." A display flickered to life, showing a holographic message. A human woman stood beside a Vesserai royal, their hands joined. "If you're viewing this, another convergence approaches," the woman began. "We're Sophia Reeves and Prince Talavir of the Kronos Initiative. What we tell you will sound impossible, but the fate of both worlds depends on your understanding." The message explained how Earth and Noctera existed in quantum resonance, their cores vibrating at complementary frequencies across space. During your convergence, these frequencies could either harmonize, strengthening both worlds, or destructively interfere, potentially destroying both planets. "The natural bridge between our worlds isn't technology," Sophia's hologram continued. "It's consciousness, specifically, the unique resonance created when human and Vesserai minds connect." A distant explosion shook the forest as Celevra's forces located them. Through their bond, Leona felt Durovan's determination solidify. "They're trying to stop the harmonization," he said, moving to one side of the control interface. "The traditional houses never accepted that our future requires connection with Earth. They'd rather risk destruction." Leona took position at the other control panel. "Then let's prove them wrong." As hovercrafts appeared at the forest's edge, they placed their hands on the ancient interface. The device responded immediately, crystals illuminating as their bond amplified through the system. "Focus on our connection," Durovan instructed, his consciousness reaching for hers. "Not just thoughts. Everything that defines us both." Leona closed her eyes, allowing their bond to deepen beyond anything they'd experienced. His memories became hers. Childhood in the crystal towers, the weight of royal expectation, his secret fear of failing his people. In return, she shared her journey, Earth's struggle with climate change, her passion for understanding the cosmos, her loneliness among the stars. Above, the twin moons aligned perfectly. The crystal forest blazed with light as energy surged through the ancient network connecting to Noctera's core. Within the vessel, the resonance amplifier channeled their bonded consciousness, creating a harmonic frequency that spread outward in expanding waves. Celebra and her forces broke through the tree line, weapons ready, only to stop in awe as the crystalline structures around them transformed, revealing hidden patterns that connected in a planet-wide network. "It's working," Darovan whispered, his voice echoing strangely as their consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations. Through their enhanced perception, they witnessed Noctera's destabilizing core begin to rebalance, chaotic energy patterns resolving into harmonious flow. More surprisingly, they glimpsed Earth, distant but connected, its own geomagnetic field strengthening in response. As the amplifier reached peak resonance, a final revelation unfolded in their shared consciousness. Images of possible futures, branching before them. Not just for themselves, but for both civilizations, gradually growing closer across centuries of exchange and mutual development. The convergence reached its apex, a blinding flash connecting the moons, planet, and distant Earth in perfect alignment. When the light faded, the crystal forest had transformed, new growth extending in impossible configurations that somehow reminded Leona of Earth's mathematical constants. Celebra stood frozen at the forest's edge, watching as the ground ceased, trembling for the first time in weeks. Behind her, Jarvek stepped forward, his expression changed. "The archives spoke truth," he said, addressing both Darovan and the assembled witnesses. "Our worlds are meant to connect, not separate." As the amplifier powered down, Leona and Darovan maintained their physical connection, the bond between them now permanent and unbreakable. Through it flowed not just their individual consciousness, but something new, a shared understanding that transcended either species alone. "The Celestial Covenant is fulfilled," Eladri announced, having arrived with members of the Sovereign Circle. "As it was 5 centuries ago, as it will be again." Noctera's moons began their slow separation, but the harmony established during convergence remained, stabilizing both worlds across the vast distance between them. "What happens now?" Leona asked, looking toward the citadel visible on the horizon. Darovan smiled, taking her hand. "Now we build the bridge between worlds that began with an unintended bond and will continue long after we're gone." In the crystal forest, new formations continued to grow, taking shapes that resembled both Earth and Vezeri script, the physical manifestation of 2 civilizations learning to resonate as one.